Monday. Present. Sebastian.
Present.
Lewis.
Present.
Brian.
Here.
Tyrone. Here. Hyland.
Here.
And Clark Park.
This meeting has been properly noticed as an open meeting under the laws of the state. Great. Okay. Item 4 on the agenda is to approve the agenda. I'll entertain a motion to approve or amend.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll second that.
All right, we have a motion to approve, a motion and a second to approve the agenda as written. All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Great, this will be our working agenda for the evening. Item 5, approve minutes from the August 13th meeting. Give those a glance. They're fairly lengthy, but I'll entertain a motion to accept or amend.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from 8/13/2020's Plan Commission meeting.
I'll second that.
Great, and I have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by aye.
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 Opposed? Great, minutes are approved. All right, agenda item number 6. We have citizen comments, just a short period of time to take any comments from any citizen that might be present.
Folks that are joining us via Zoom are here for the public hearing. So item 8A.
Okay, nobody out there in TV land?
I didn't receive any
Okay. All right, none for the record on that item. Moving on to item 7, unfinished business. Not really. We have our carrying on business with the comp plan will be under new business, right?
Yeah, well, because we're essentially at that point, it's the final draft that you're reviewing again. Plus, putting it at the end.
Right, that's nice to everyone, right? Okay. All right, moving on to new business. Item 8A, we have a public hearing to review the request of Jeff Ferrari for a conditional use permit to allow a drive-through facility for parcel number 11211-908.5 located at 108 Dick Street. 9, sorry, foggy glasses problem, thank you. I got through the PIN number. It took a lot out of me. All right. I'd like to open the public hearing. We generally start with a short intro by Matt and then an opportunity for the applicant to present. So let's go ahead and do that.
So as you can see in the staff report, the conditional use is for a food Taco Bell at 109 Dick Street, which is currently the Badger. Oh, that's, yeah. Thank you, Lisa. Forgot about that. Which is the it's at the Badger Car Wash, which is located at 109 Dick Street. The need for the conditional use is any drive-through is treated. It necessitates the need for a conditional use permit. So the applicant has submitted their conditional use permit along with all relevant plans that we need to review a conditional use permit. As you can see in the staff report, since this is new construction, there's a review that staff had to go through just to review everything. Just quickly going through it, and I'll let Brian and or Brad address some of these as they talk about the project. Parking, they have 28 stalls. By code, they would have to have 24, so they're fine for off-street parking. Lighting, the lighting plan that they've shown meets our code. It says 2-foot candles at the property lines, and they're well under that. Landscaping plan, they have submitted a landscaping plan that is, I think that something that will look nice, and I think that's something that is something that will improve the appearance in that area. So generally, I think that's at this point is okay. The grading and stormwater plan, Jason has reviewed that. He's given several comments, but they've been addressing those comments. And I did receive an updated plan set recently after the packets went out. And I can show you those plans. Typically, though, for the plans that we're talking about, there haven't been any major changes to the site layout or anything of that. I mean, we're talking small details that you can see in the letter from Jason that I included in your packet. Plan of operation, they'll have 7 to 9 full-time employees with 14 to 16 part-time. The max they would have on a shift is 10, 8 to 10 per shift, depending on, and they'll be open from 7 to 1 a.m. every day. So I know in the original plan of operation, I think they indicated it was like 9:30 to 4 a.m. That I asked about, like, is that the time, and they confirmed it was actually 7 to 1. So I need to update the plan of operation. Notices for this for the public hearing were noticed in the Columbus Journal on August 22nd. So by code, it's at least 15 days, calendar days before the meeting, and also the adjacent property owners were all noticed as required under code. One of the things when you're looking at the conditional use under section 114/-29, usually when we're looking at conditional uses, I mean, we have to kind of evaluate them against these six things that are within our code. To date, really, we haven't had conditional use with this much development, so a lot of these items really haven't been as critical as they are for this development. One of the things to note is under 5, when it says adequate measures have been taken to provide ingress, egress as designed to minimize traffic congestion in the public streets. That was, you'll look under the recommendation, there's 2 items that specifically relate to ingress, egress. When we first found out about the project, before we had a site plan, at a staff level, we talked. The only concern really we had about the site is if they wanted 2 driveways and the amount of traffic on Dick Street, we prefer now that the commercial developments there would only have 1 driveway onto Dick Street, because then you have fewer access points, which basically creates fewer. I can't. Thank you. Yeah, so I was trying to think of the engineering term, but I couldn't think of it. But yeah, I mean, it just creates more conflict where accidents could happen if you're having somebody turn left if somebody's turning right. So, and then we also requested, if possible, if they could have their driveway shifted to the north, because there's a lot of traffic coming out of the Culvers onto Dick's. So, and this isn't any different than recent developments in this stretch. The O'Reilly Auto Parts predates me, but they only have 1 driveway. And it's all, to limit the access points it helps enhance safety. So that's been a big item. After working with the project team for this, we feel fairly confident that number 5 has been addressed. The one item that you'll note under the recommendations when you look at item 6, it basically says the council would be recommending that under 86-191 D2 that the grantee, which in this case would be the Taco Bell, would have they'd get an exception to the width. By code, they're allowed 32 feet, but it's kind of one of those things. They get an extra 4 feet. They have 1 driveway. That was something that staff felt was important. And actually, when you read the details under 86-191 D2, it basically gives the discretion to the cow to make that, grant exceptions in cases where it could enhance safety. So in this case, I definitely feel it does. You can see the recommendations. Once again, this is, similar to what we did with the last conditional use. I'll just go through them quick. Any and all conditional uses that have been discontinued for a period of 365 days are automatically invalidated. So Taco Bell ceases to exist and they don't sell it for a year. And McDonald's wants to buy it and put a fast food restaurant there with the drive-through, they'd have to go through this process all over again. Basically, garbage should be screened in areas screened from the public in accordance with 114.97.2. Basically, the conditional use permit that we're granting is valid as long as they follow all the recommendations that we have made. Basically, the conditional use is transferred to the next owner as long as they meet the conditions that have been outlined for them. Number 5 is basically when council approves, or if council approves the project, which I would anticipate they would, that basically the final set of plans are what the expectation is for the development. So if they don't meet those plans, let's say the landscaping plan, they don't install all their landscaping because they want to save some money, we can say, well, no, you're going to lose your conditional permit, or potentially lose your conditional permit if you don't follow your plans that you submitted. So 6 we just talked about with the minimum driveway width. So and just when you look at the plans, this is the way we interpret the code. It's the minimum driveway width at the property line. The apron goes out to 39 feet. I didn't see anywhere in the code where it describes what the apron width should be. It's just the driveway width at the property line. So that's a key note. Correct, because the apron is in the right of way. Paul.
Can I step backwards for a moment? I know we talked about this yesterday, but I guess I'm a little bit confused by number 4. Just a minute ago, you said if McDonald's wanted them in there and McDonald's, they have to go through the same process. But I think all the terms that are approved conditional use should be continued regardless of ownership.
So in this case would be if Mr. Ferrari, who's the applicant in this case, sells his franchise rights to somebody else, and they just keep operating the Taco Bell, and it's just a change of ownership of the real estate. That means they don't have to come in for the conditional use. But in the case where Taco Bell goes out of business and nobody's in that building for 365 days, then basically the slate is wiped clean when you go back to reoccupy the building. That's the difference. Let's see. This one was also kind of standard. Is I need to be notified if the plan of operation changes substantially. So if they want to stay open to 1:30, I don't really need to know. But if it's going to be 24 hours, that's probably something I should be aware of. The grantee is required to get all necessary permits. All business activities conducted on the property shall conform to the conditional use permit, the plan of operation, and our code of ordinances. And the plan of operation is on file with me. Well, assuming I'm here forever, but the zoning administrator, I should say. The changes subsequent to the initial issuance of this conditional use permit shall require amendment to the permit. So if there's any sort of major changes to the recommendations, it would need to be amended. One thing to keep in mind when you look at our code also, our code defines what on our conditional use permit is a major change and a minor change. So there's a lot of minor changes, a lot of tweaks that are going to happen that necessarily won't have to come back to the Plan Commission, but they'll be approved before council approves it. And the other thing, just to update the Plan Commission, is after some discussion, we decided that, any sort of conditional use permit or rezoning is going to be a two-step process at council, and any sort of minor type of like CSM, that'd probably be a one-step, just go straight to the council. Just in case there's the need for the extra added review. So this is going to go to the COW. So this is going to go to the COW on Tuesday. I just put it in the packet today. And then it will be finally approved on October 6th. And which will end up being a good thing because we're working through a lot of changes from the staff level review that aren't necessarily like major changes to the site itself, but they're just kind of engineering type details. So it's going to give us, I think, more time to make sure everything's finalized and we have a final set of plans. So when it's approved on the 6th, well, not construction, they're going to start demolishing the Badger car wash on the 5th. So theoretically speaking, if Mr. Ferrari has title to the property before that date, there's no reason he couldn't start with the demo work and the site clearance work before a final approval. I mean, I would assume that on Tuesday he would have a good understanding of if it's going to be approved or not, or if there are any outstanding issues. So I don't think that's, if they were already demolishing the building and starting building, yeah, then I'd have some concerns. But it is something that probably is a risk, but I don't think it's a big one. So I put the application in, the plan of operation. All of these seem fairly simple. One thing I wanted to highlight is after some discussion that really kind of resulted out of a couple conditional use permits ago, our attorney was like, well, you can record these at the county and it would make a lot of sense to do that. And I said, okay. So he drafted this template, which we're going to use for the Gates conditional use permit. And essentially, once the real estate transaction's taken place, and in this case, Jeff Ferrari has access or title to the property, I'm going to go up to Portage and record this. And basically, this just records, and then there's so if if I'm gone and somebody's trying to figure out what happened with this property, there's actually a record out there that's easy to find. So this will be recorded. You can see some of Jason's comments. I mean, there's 2 pages of comments, but none of them were critical, and I'll let Bryant address some of these because I know they have worked through it and addressed all of these comments. I included a nice picture of what it's going to look like in the plan. And then why don't I just stop here and let him go through the project, and then when we get into the second part of this, we can go through the site plan and talk a little bit more in depth about questions on that. So this is just kind of the project for the public hearing. So
Great. Thanks, Matt.
Yep.
The applicants are joining us via Zoom. Why don't you go ahead and introduce yourselves, and you probably don't necessarily need to rehash all the stuff Matt said, but maybe tell us what you'd like to kind of augment that.
All right, my name is Brian Christensen. Thank you for meeting with us. I work for River Valley Architects. We are the architect for this project. So we're representing Jeff Ferrari. Can you guys hear me all right?
yes,
Perfect. And then we have Brad that will be going over the civil stuff and all the comments that Jason had. But the building itself is a 2,000 square foot Taco Bell. Like Matt said, Matt, you did a great job on explaining the building.
mm-hmm. Thank you.
With that Taco Bell, we're going to have James Hardy siding, and it'll be a typical Taco Bell. We have a little issue with the site coming into it that we already addressed with Matt, with using that existing cut and having that north side entry. We have the trash enclosure, that's all screened off from the public. The circulation around the building through the drive-through is wide enough for any kind of emergency vehicles. The building itself will be just a typical Taco Bell. It's their new prototype, so it'll be, I think it might be the first one in Wisconsin for this prototype. So they're really excited to get this one going. And if there's any other questions that you guys have on the building itself, I can answer those. Or we can have Brad go off with the site comments from Jordan earlier. Or Jason.
Hi, everybody. Brad Betcher with General Engineering. You can hear me okay as well?
Yes.
Hard on this end. Going last, I don't think there's much left to say. Other than just maybe a couple of points would be, usually we talk about location and a bunch of other things, which I think everybody knows. A couple of points about sewer and water. We're going to use the existing laterals that were existing for the car wash, and we're basically just anything in the right of way is staying from a lateral standpoint, so we don't have to go out into the road or anything. If you notice that, we're going to be extending them and getting them to our building, our private site, but we're not having to go out in the right of way at all. Two, in the right of way though, we're eliminating that second driveway, so we're going to replace some curb there, do a little asphalt patch. We're also adjusting the sidewalk, if you notice, up a little bit to make the site grades work better. The sidewalk looks like it's actually below the curb. I just wanted to kind of bring that up to everybody. As we start entering our site off of the sidewalk, we want to make that all ADA accessible and things. And it wasn't working with the sidewalk being so low. Otherwise, stormwater, we're under an acre, so we don't have DNR requirements or permits. But from the city's perspective, our goal is total suspended solids removal, 40%, which we meet with the biofilter that's in the southwest corner, and then that's going to discharge through an existing storm sewer inlet via pipe. Otherwise, all of our site stormwater ends up either in the biofilter or in our storm sewer collection on site, bypassing the biofilter, one of the two. Our overall TSS removal for the project meets the city's requirements. Otherwise, pretty basic site. We're open for questions. And I guess we did have that comments from Jason. I think we've addressed all those comments in our revised plan set that we sent. It was late, but yesterday was moving pretty fast, so we've been trying to kind of keep up, and it's just a timing thing. But I believe that anything that Jason had in there should be addressed. If it's not, if there's one or two that he still has questions on, we'll take care of them. But again, there was nothing major, as Matt said. It was a lot of technical things, or can you clarify this? Can you change that? And we did. It didn't really affect the site plan.
All right, thanks, gentlemen. All right, Planning Commission will get a chance to deliberate about this after the public hearing is finished, but is there, Matt, do you want to add anything else? Applicants, you're set?
Not at the moment. I mean,
Okay.
I think since we still are deliberating is the second step. So I think at that point, if we want to do a more thorough look at the site plan, I think we can do that under that step. So we can.
Right. I'll solicit public comments.
And I don't know if I mentioned this during my feedback, but when I did notice the neighbors, I didn't receive any sort of comments for or against the project. So.
Okay, good, duly noted. And the properties that were notified were listed in the advertisement, weren't they?
No, they weren't listed in the advertisement.
Okay, I assume it's Culver's, Subway, and the Family Restaurant.
Well,
Fitness Fusion, is that who's there?
so the notifications went out to Napleton, the Columbus Family Restaurant, the apartments that are behind it that
Yep.
are owned by Frankoff Properties, the Subway, and the Culvers. Yeah, sorry.
Okay, that was memorialized somewhere in here, I thought.
Yeah, well,
okay,
and
that's
also
fine.
technically, city property was adjacent to that because part of the countryside site is that the city
Right.
bought is adjacent. So
Okay, but no comments that were written in from any of the notificants?
No, not that, yeah.
Okay. All right, I'll solicit comments from the general public then on this proposed conditional use permit. I'll ask a second time, any comments from the public on this proposed conditional use permit? And for the third and final ask, any comments from the general public on this proposed conditional use permit?
Well, before you, should probably pull Zoom back up just to make sure. Yeah, nobody else is on.
Okay.
So
All
I
right,
always forget that Zoom's on there and somebody could comment through that, so.
okay. Hearing none, I'm going to close the public hearing and open it for deliberation amongst the committee here, so, or
Sure.
commission. Any commission members have comments?
Do you want me to go through the site plan first? The plans, the current plans that I have?
Oh, yeah, sorry. I did that myself. And I
No, it's
kind of
okay. I'll try to
flew
share.
past it. All right.
I'll try to share the screen too, so everybody can see at home. I know we've had some technical difficulties. So when I sent out the plans, their full set of plans is very thorough. I mean, it's got all the architecture plans in them, and it's like 40 some pages. I tried to boil it down to the plans that are required for a conditional use permit, so it wasn't 100 pages. But these were the plans that Brad mentioned that they sent out yesterday. So I'll just stop at the plans that really are required under the conditional use permit. I know this is a signage plan, but it shows the floor plan. There's 40 seats here, so that was something that was used to calculate the parking requirements, because for a restaurant, it's the number of seats divided by 3 is part of it, plus the number of employees on a max shift. So just for that reference. So I mean, this is the kind of site as it is today.
Can you stop right here, Matt?
Sure.
This is good context. So they are using the existing northerly entrance. So their new entrance is going to go right where that is. So you can kind of see how that's positioned in relationship to the 2 entrances to the family restaurant and to that egress from the drive-through at Culver's immediately to the south. So kind of note some of the separation between those things.
Yeah, there was some thought given to originally have it lined up with the family restaurant, but ultimately we figured it was best to have it as on the northern entrance, and being that Columbus Family Restaurant's been there, has been grandfathered, and they have 3 access points. That would be something I think that if there was ever a project in there, we might have to look at. Maybe one of those access points would go away. But since they're on a corner lot, there are no, I guess, issues right now. But I mean, it is one of the few properties on this stretch that has 3 driveways.
Yeah,
So
and the rate of ingress egress there is just, it's different than for a drive-through type of thing. So
yeah, that's true. This is also another, I guess, current existing site. I think it shows where the utilities come in as well. So this is the site plan that we have in front of us. So you notice this is where you'll see the 36s in here. So they have a right hand, a left hand out in the entrance. I guess I've seen this kind of design more common nowadays. So thankfully it shrinks it all, or it puts it all in one driveway, but with the widths, as I said, it's 36 and it's 36 at the property line. The one thing to note, I think Dick's has an 80-foot right of way, so it's a little bit wider. Okay, 70, sorry. I know it's wider than the normal right of way, and it's not, the property line technically doesn't start at the sidewalk. It's a little little in from there. They said there's 28 stalls, 2 are handicapped accessible. This meets the ADA requirements. They show their garbage refuse area in the back. It's screened. Any questions on the site plan? They do have a dry kind of biofilter retention area on the south side, and it's really to handle TSS and infiltration requirements, I believe.
Yeah, and they noted that this site is actually small enough to kind of get under the threshold as governed by
Correct.
the
It's
state,
not
but
it's not an acre in size, so they don't have to address
But
quantity.
through the site plan review process, that was addressed to satisfy the, sort of the city's,
Yes.
city's code.
I just had a question.
This is Brad at General Engineering. Just to clarify, even if we were over an acre, we would have to submit the DNR and get approval, but because it's a redevelopment site, we would not necessarily have to meet infiltration or detention requirements for a redevelopment site.
Right, you'd still have to meet TSS for total suspended
Correct.
solids
Which
removal
we're already-
requirements. Yep,
Yep.
yep.
Matt, is there any, I don't know if they're normally noted on here, but as far as like trash receptacles on the in and outsides of going on the indoors and the out,
Oh, you mean like on
just
the,
actual trash receptacles, like for use of customers? Does that need?
like
yeah.
on the sidewalks? It does not show.
I don't know if that's not normal to show or what, but I was just curious.
I'll let Brian. Is that in one of the other pages? I haven't. I've really focused on those that are only relevant to this conditional use. So
Right,
some of the
yeah.
other items that are in the full set of plans, I haven't.
On the interior, it talks about the trash receptacles,
Yes.
just not the exterior. I was curious.
On the exterior, we have that patio, and on sheet A900, which is the last sheet of the documents, there's a patio layout, and that shows the trash location.
Okay.
Here. The trash location is labeled T759 on that last page. So there's one out by that patio, kind of where that 10-foot mark is against the building.
Thank you.
What was the page number again?
E900 would be the last page in all the documents.
Oh,
Oh, and if you don't have it on there, but, yeah, the PDF that I sent over to you, it just has a patio layout, and it shows where the trash, and that would be an exterior trash container.
okay. Is that
So facing Dick Street is the patio you're referring to?
yes?
And that's the only exterior trash receptacle?
Yeah, it's just generally this area shown here. I believe that's what they said, yes.
Sorry, were you looking for the plan sheet that showed where
Yeah.
receptacles were? Is this a concern to you?
I was more curious to make sure that there was at least some trash receptacle on the exterior,
Okay.
just for
Yeah, might I,
cleanliness.
if it's any kind of concern, might I suggest that we make a note to have staff make sure that there's,
Yeah.
you know, something on the plan,
Yeah.
because the plan date that gets approved is gonna go in that document that gets recorded,
Yeah,
so. Okay,
I'm assuming it would make sense just to have it kind of near the main entrance on that south side of the building on the sidewalk somewhere, so.
yeah, and what I'm suggesting is, sorry, as opposed to making it, you know, some kind of condition in our thing, we simply have staff make sure that it gets addressed.
Okay. Any other questions on the site plan? So this is the revised lighting plan, and it's hard to see. But when I completed my review, you basically just look at the numbers, the photometric readings at the property line. One of the questions that Jason had was to adjust some of the lighting so there's more lighting by the entrance. So as people enter the site from the right of way, that it's better lit than what the original plans were. I guess I do have a question, Bryant. So are you guys adding a pole, or did you guys shift that pole on the north side of the property line?
We shifted a pole that was on Dick Street that was suggested
Okay,
in the comments. So
Okay.
we shifted the pole by the crosswalk. We
Oh.
shifted that up so it's closer to the crosswalk, and then you get a little bit more
okay,
at that intersection. We can shift the one on the north side, or we could put it the one on Dick Street by Dick Street there. We could put that on the other side of the crosswalk as well.
okay. I think I'll defer to Jason if that's adequate or not. But as I said, I shared that with him once I got the comment, or once I got the revised plans. But they've taken steps to, and they sounds like they're still willing to make adjustments to what is on the screen is the current plans. That's why I'm sorry. Maybe I didn't make that clear. So the plans we got yesterday, I'm putting on the screen instead of what's in your packet. I didn't have time to adjust the packet and send it out again. So I figured use the technology so we can see what they have. I don't really have any other questions on the lighting plan. Let's see.
Hey, Matt, this is
Yep.
Brad Baston.
Yes.
On the lighting plan, if you guys are gonna look at shifting those a little bit, I would encourage you to look at the pedestrian conflict point at the road, just as the light seems to drop off from the inside corner, and the actual crosswalk seems to be fairly dark. So I guess I would encourage them to look at making sure that conflict point with the pedestrians is looked at carefully.
Okay. I think he's referring to the crosswalk in front.
On the old packet is what I'm saying, is the light is way down here.
Brad, are you looking at the old packet or what's on the screen?
I'm looking at what's on the screen, and I'm looking at the city sidewalk that crosses the driveway.
We'll be Ralston North.
Oh, gotcha. Well, and I think that was part of the reason why Jason wanted to see better lighting at that intersection as well, was the pedestrian.
Right. It's far more important there than the north side of the building, or whatever. I forget which side is north. The up side of the building. Yeah, it's much more important that conflict point where the pedestrians are.
It's noted.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions on the lighting plan? The next That's not what I want. This is the grading plan for the project right here. This is one that, looking at Jason's comments, that I believe they have this is one where I think I'll have to defer to his comments and follow up with Jason to make sure that they've addressed items 1 through 8 in his letter dated September 1st. I guess, Bryant, you can, if you want to talk a little bit about addressing these comments, or Brad.
Sure, I can, and unfortunately, when you're on the screen, I can't see the comments. I have them up as a PDF, but I can't, while leaving, I think, see them. You want to just go through them quickly? Oh, there they are, okay.
No, I'll bring them up.
I should have printed them, I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. So,
There.
yep, so it's sheet C4.
Yeah, so C 4.0, the 6-inch diameter under drain in the bioretention, that's that line that comes out of the circle that's out of the manhole diagonally across the biofilter. You see the manhole, the one that goes kind of down and to the right? That's the 6-inch biofilter, and it's called out on the utility plan as a 6-inch ADS storm pipe. I think that issue was addressed. Existing inlet on Dix, because there's actually two inlets next to each other there. And so we kind of confirmed again, on the utility drawing, we have the pipe size, the invert elevation, that existing inlet A, so we've kind of done that. There is a power pole nearby there, so I think we're not going to hit it, but we're not going to be very deep either. Inlet A is only 3 feet deep. I just think that the contractor, we can note this additional note we want, but the contractors that are digging, they may have to have some power company there kind of holding the poles because they're going to be right next to it. But we're only going to be 3 feet. Item 3, the storm sewer in the right of way, we noted that as concrete pipe. RCP is concrete pipe. Number 4, the side of create inverts follow the storm pipe. That's on sheet 5.0. So we kind of added that to the utility drawing, which at the time that this review was done, the utility drawing didn't exist. So that's why some of those things got on there. And scroll down. Overland flow stormwater from the bioretention area. We actually note the overflow on 4.0, it's towards the right of way or towards the sidewalk. Tracking pad location, we have that shown at location of the existing driveway, and I'll make a note of it, but we won't go all the way out to the curb line, because I'm not sure we're going to be removing that component. We'll start at the back of the sidewalk, actually. The erosion control at the back of the sidewalk, we show silt fence all the way around that corner of the site on the west side. And number 8, we showed it in the protection on the culvert's property, and we just over the right of way line, and we removed that, so there's no. I think we've addressed all of those.
Any questions? All right. Looking for L100. So this is the updated landscaping plan. One thing to note, I know the original plan had a few more plantings along the south side of the lot and kind of the north side of the driveway. I think due to they were out and kind of looking at other landscaping that was done in the area. And this basically exceeds kind of what's done in the other areas. And I think they had concerns over the lifespan of some of the shrubs adjacent to the areas where, you know, the parking lot was with salt and snow plowing and et cetera. So as far as the quantity, by code, technically Jason's the one that signed off on this. The only thing that we want before the plans are finalized is a better or a detailed planting list. Right now, we kind of have what Taco Bell prefers for the different types of trees, shrubs, you know, for each kind of classification. But I think before everything's approved, we gotta at least have a, you know, we're gonna put, you know, 5 maple trees out, or how, basically to take the planting list and be a little bit more specific than what we have. Ultimately, when I'm out there enforcing it, trying to get people that recently went through this was Drexel, trying to get the landscaping plan in reality to meet what they submitted on paper. There is some flexibility on what they plant. But when we approve it, we kind of want to have a better idea of exactly what's going in there. So that's something, and I shared that with Bryant today. And that will be updated by the time it's approved on October 6th. I think for our plans, I think that does it. I mean, that's really the bulk of what's required for the conditional use. One thing that we didn't require that we could is a traffic impact analysis, but I think that gets back to, like, once we found out about the project, the one concern or the one issue we wanted to work to resolve was we were hoping to have one driveway, and we have a proposal with one driveway. So we've been able to address that as far as what staff was concerned about. So
I do have a question.
Sure.
About the one driveway versus two. I understand that the reason why you chose the north, or it was worked out that the north driveway would be the main driveway as opposed to the current south driveway, having to, being separate from the entrance of the family restaurant. However, the north driveway seems to, up closer to that intersection, seems to become more congested, and I guess that's my only concern, is that oftentimes when you're approaching that stoplight at Dix Street with James Street, that there's often a backup of cars already there, and then there's also several cars, especially once the left turning lane begins, backed up, trying to either turn left onto James Street or to turn left into Quick Trip. I guess that's my only concern, and that was my thought, is just kind of talking through that and what would be more impactful. Is it the concern of having conflict with the Columbus Family Restaurant, or should we be more concerned about, I guess, a potential backup in that area north?
I think I can speak pretty well to that. I've kind of been looking at, just as a hobby, looking at traffic in that whole area. I happen to have a plot of the whole location. So being familiar with that intersection, right, that Quick Trip entrance is less than 150 feet from the intersection at Highway 16 and 60. Okay. The distance between the Quick Trip entrance and the entrance that they're proposing is 300 feet. So it's 450 feet from the intersection, 300 feet from that Quick Trip entrance. So it's still between, so the ingress egress at Taco Bell would be between the two entrances of the family restaurant. In fact, basically straight across from the building. So that's pretty far south from those areas but you're right, I share a real concern about some of the conflicts near that intersection. I think that's very separated from the intersection, and I think it's correct to try to separate the Taco Bell ingress and egress as much as possible from the Culver's one, because that's the second most conflicting point compared to that, man, that quick trip in and out is just rough, yeah. So, anyway, so I think, given the constraints, that's probably the best location. Is it perfect? Probably not, but I don't know that there's perfection out here. But I think out of the choices available, it's the best one.
Thank you, Uriah. Thank you for bringing up the Culver's entrance and just getting a maximum distance from there. I think that does make sense.
Yeah, those, I sort of envisioned that last night, right? You're turning right out of the Culver's drive-through, and if there's an entrance or right there by Taco Bell and somebody's turning left, you'll have those things going on at the same time, and they won't even see each other.
That's about, what, 16, 17 cars?
Yeah, ish.
Okay.
Hey, Matt, this is Brad Baston.
Yep.
Can we go back to the landscape plan?
Sure. Let's see.
So can the city make more requests in this regard?
We could. Generally speaking, though, our code, some communities, and we're looking at it for when we update our zoning code, they have like a point system to award for landscaping to basically create more, I guess, clear way to evaluate what amount of landscaping is needed for a project, but we really don't have that. I mean, it ends up being a lot of times staff discretion. So I guess with that, what did you have in mind?
Well, my thought would be to plant shade trees, at least between Culver's and the Taco Bell on that line, to break up that kind of sea of pavement. I know there would be a grass border, but there's nothing that breaks that up, so it starts to look a lot more busy. Whereas if they're broken up by a row of shade trees, I think that would make the area look nicer. And you could have the same argument on the north side, but it's much, much tighter. But at least on the south side, a row of shade trees looks nice, and it would provide shade for parking on that side, which a lot of people do appreciate, if they're eating in their cars or stopping or parking. So I think that would be an advantage to the site itself, as well as enhance the view as you drive down the road, and we just don't see pavement all over the place, but there'd be a little more breakup with some natural features. And, I hear the concern about the salt. I personally haven't seen that in any landscaping that I've seen anywhere. I know it is a concern, but so I don't think it'd be that big of a deal, and there certainly are more salt tolerant choices if that was really an issue.
That we could certainly make that request for the
Thank you.
conditional use.
Yeah, I'd say that'd be a good one to make a suggestion to staff as they're finalizing their review.
If you look at the south border of the Culver's lot, it looks much nicer just because there's trees there than the north border of the Culver's lot. And it just provides a nicer environment for everybody.
This is Brad at General Engineering. I agree from the aesthetics. I just would want to be a little bit careful because we do have that light pole on that side. That as the shade trees grow up, it blocks the light at night and at evenings. I just want to make sure that if there is placement of trees there, we just be cautious about the light that happens. That's in the middle of that parking lot.
How many, Brad, I guess as I look at this, how many trees would be adequate, do we think? Brad Bastion.
Yeah, right.
Sorry, I realized that.
Are they 11-foot wide parking stalls?
10.
10? Okay.
No, our code says 10 and they revised. Sorry.
Yeah.
They
My
are
gut,
10 feet wide, yes.
my gut feel, if you put in some relatively quick growing things, because you wouldn't put oaks in here, it'll take 30 years. You know, I would say 30 feet on center maybe would be a nice spacing, 30 to 40. So like 4 trees, maybe 5 trees. Depends how it laid out.
Okay,
Thank you, Matt.
no problem.
Matt, were there any other plan sheets you wanted to share with us?
Those were the ones that were, as I said, applicable to the conditional use permit and that process. So,
Okay. All right, so committee members, I know we've kind of made some comments on sheets as we went along. I'd like to make a couple of comments and then I'll kind of throw it back open to everybody here. So, number 1, and this is kind of getting off the plans. I'm pretty well satisfied that that's been handled well by staff. I noticed the difference in the plan of operation in the staff report versus what was written on their operation plan, and you said that is going to be modified?
yeah, that was
Okay,
something
good.
after I got the plan of operation,
Yep.
it didn't seem to add up, so I emailed Bryant and asked for
Yeah.
clarification, and they gave it to me. And
Great. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm going to back up and make a general statement here. So the reason this is here for conditional use is because it is a drive-through.
Correct.
So I guess I appreciate everybody's comments on things. I do want to sort of remind everybody that that's really the primary reason. So things that have to do with, I think, traffic, I think, yeah, drive-through places where people come through and generate trash, but just want to get rid of it is certainly a concern, things like that. So as we think of our comments, let's, keep focused on maybe that particular aspect. On that point, are there any other businesses that are open that late in this area? Is Quick Trip 24 hours? Okay,
I think that was the only one I would think of. that's
okay. I
stayed
think
late.
Culver's is like till 10. I'm just trying to
Walgreens
think
is
how it fits into the rest of
10
the...
or 11, I think.
Okay,
Walgreens
how it
is-
fits
yeah.
into the rest of the neighborhood, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, right, okay. When the smoke stops rising, you know they're closed. All right. Okay, I wanted to kind of double check that. Then, I think you did point this out, I'll point it out again. The staff recommendations, all 11 points were carried straight over to that recordable document.
Yes.
So whatever we modify here potentially by our conditions will also get reflected in that document.
Yes, yeah. That's just the current draft of that document. I mean, obviously, when you look at that document, I still have to fill in dates
Yeah,
and confirm.
no, that's right.
Yeah,
I
but-
mostly wanted to
yeah.
point that out for
Yep.
everybody's,
Yep, correct. Thank you.
everybody's benefit. Back on that plan of operation, we call out a plan date in the recommendation. I think it would also be good to call out the plan of operation date. I know it says it's on file with you, but having a date recorded on that would
Yeah.
also be,
And to be,
Clarifying.
this is a form I've already looked at updating.
Okay.
I found it and I was like, oh, wow, we actually have a form for this. And it was kind of buried in the, anyways, so I've started to use it because it's very helpful, but I think there's some things that would be, I think it could be laid out better. So, and the other thing to note on the plan of operation, it says 45 patrons, that's actually 40. They originally had a 45 seat layout and they changed it to a 40. So that's something else that needs to be amended.
so, yeah, so I guess that's probably to my point of re-signed, redated, and have that date in that recordable document. So that's really all I had. So other
Just
Other
one,
additional comments?
just
Yeah.
one quick one, and maybe it's jumping ahead a little bit to maybe the later permitting process of things, but seeing that there's quite a big section of sidewalk to be removed and replaced, and we've got the curb work, has there been a request for any sort of street occupancy or sidewalk alternate path plan for pedestrian and some of the traffic work as it gets into the street or?
No, that would be something that would happen at a staff level, and they'd have to get a permit from our Department of Public, or Director of Public Works. So that can all be handled internally.
Yeah, okay. Perfect. Something for the contractor to think about.
Yeah.
Other comments?
Yeah, you're right, this is Brad Baston.
Yeah.
Yes, we had the same concern on the plan of operation. Does the 7 to 1 a.m. on the staff report, does that supersede what's on the application, which goes to 4 a.m.? How does that work?
No, it's the, I could send this back and have the applicant re-sign it and resend it. But it was basically, as I was doing my review, I'm like, wow, the 9 to 4, I'm like, I kind of Googled what other Taco Bells around here stay open till. I'm like, this seems off. So I emailed Bryant, and they confirmed with the owner, Jeff Ferrari, that it's going to be 7 a.m. to 1 a.m. So, and that's what made the staff report. And I can get an updated plan of operation. That shouldn't be an issue.
Okay, yeah, I just didn't want any confusion on that. And then on page 14 of the PDF, line number 10, there's no numbers, but it's line 10.
The PDF, are you talking the packet I sent out?
Yes,
Okay.
I don't know if this.
So what page is that? Like, what does it look like? Because
It says it's actually page 2, but it's 14 of the PDF that I got.
Conditional use permit, page 2.
Yeah, it's a conditional use permit.
okay, it's from gotcha. So yeah, okay. So what number are we talking?
So it's the 10th line, it says operation of a fast food restaurant with a drive-through facility with outdoor display of vehicles for sale on the property.
Huh.
That's a little confusing.
No, that would be because it was the template from Gates Automotive that I totally missed. So yeah, that should be struck.
Nice catch.
That would be, because this was a boilerplate that I'm going to be using in the future. So thank you. Because I could have recorded.
I would agree to strike that.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No. Yeah. That's yeah. So thank you.
Sure.
Hopefully somebody would have. Hopefully that would have been caught before it would have been recorded. But
It's a team effort, man.
yes. Boilerplate stuff. But it does save us the cost of having Paul redraft this every time. I'm going to have Paul review it before it gets recorded, but.
Any other comments?
I guess, maybe this is, not even related off topic, but, what are the side yard setbacks and the back setback? Because it seems really tight, and I'm sure, I know Subway's tight, but, what are the side setbacks?
So,
For park, because park lots included in
you
that.
can be, for parking lot, you can be 5 feet off.
Okay.
The side and the rear, and they're fine. The front yard setback in this district's 50, and they're 50, I think they're 51. So the setbacks are fine for this
Okay.
project. Or I should say they meet code. That's probably.
Okay, it sounds like we are at a position where we can finish our deliberations and start to entertain a motion either to recommend to council the conditions as presented in the staff report, or those with some added of our own or deleted. So, I guess in reviewing our discussions, those items 1 through 11 really are the recommended conditions. One of my comments revolved around including a reference date with the plan of operation. We had other comments to suggest to staff in their final review, but I didn't hear anything in our comments that really were to insert into the conditions. Oh, and then Brad's comment about the
trees.
outdoor vehicle sale.
Oh, yeah, well, yeah, and that
Right.
has been removed and will be
But
removed.
that's more of a format thing than necessarily the condition. So,
Correct.
that's how I'm recalling our conversation here.
And the request to update the landscaping plan to provide some shade trees at the southern border. That's more something that will be noted to council. That's something that council, that plan commission wanted to see and staff supports. So. But I don't think that needs, I mean, that just needs to be reflected on the plan, so when the plans are adopted, or when, assuming everything gets approved on the 6th of October, the final plans that are submitted shows some shade trees.
Okay. And note that the variance for the driveway width is worked right into this recommendation.
Correct. And technically, even though it's coming as a recommendation from this group can't actually make that call. That call can only be made by the COW by code. So, but it being that it starts here, I just wanted that discussion to be clear. So you're not putting a recommendation in that you don't know what, yeah.
All right, so I'll entertain a motion.
I'd like to make a motion to recommend to the council to approve the request of Jeff Ferrari for a conditional use permit to allow a drive-through facility for parcel number 1121-908.5 located at 109 Dick Street.
I'll second that.
Any further discussion? And that's, want to clarify your motion, that's with the conditions as presented.
With the conditions as presented.
Okay.
Still have my second.
I'll second that.
All right, any discussion? Hearing none, we'll call the vote. All those in favor signify by aye.
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 Opposed? Great, let's send it up the chain.
Right. Just for Bryant and Brad, this will be going to our committee of the whole on the 15th. I will send you an agenda when I have a agenda that's finalized, that I think is going to be finalized tomorrow. So,
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks. All right, moving on to 8C, review and discuss draft solar array ordinance.
So this is only being introduced tonight. My plan is to have a, here, let me bring this up. Sorry, I'm trying to do two things at once and. All right, so council reviewed this on the meeting on It's been the 18th of August. The purpose for this solar array ordinance is, right now our codes are very vague when it comes to regulation of solar arrays. And being that when we had Columbus Water and Light recently had a project out there, after muddling through how our code regulates these, we realized their project met our code, but we should have some sort of better rules in place for these, assuming that as we move to the future, solar panels in single family or commercial becomes more common. We felt that it made sense to actually have some rules. So what you have before you to review is a ordinance that our city attorney recommended. I believe this was one that he was involved with in Cross Plains, and it's a very similar ordinance. The one issue that I think needs some consideration is item number 5 under section 1 under 114.19. And it says no person shall in control of a property shall allow a tree or shrub to be placed or grow to cast a shadow between 9 and 3 p.m. on a solar energy. So it's kind of if you have a solar cell, or if you have a solar array and you put it on your property and your neighbor wants to put a tree there, there's some limitations on if they can put a tree on their property. If the tree exists first and grows up, then the way I understand it is that the tree wins. So my thinking is this is going to be a pain in the butt for the zoning administrator to try to enforce. Hopefully I'll be retired by the time this becomes an issue, but it is definitely something I think that needs to be considered. How do you handle blocking out the sun for these projects? Tonight my simple goal was to introduce it, and at the October 8th meeting we'd have to have a public hearing for this ordinance, and then make some sort of recommendation that we go to council, and then council could approve it, or could theoretically approve it on the 20th. So this is and just to let Plan Commission know, the process changed a little. When we did the site plan ordinance, we did a lot of the work here, and then we put it to the COW and then the council, and then we decided, council should have some indication that this is coming. So we've decided to go, the COW is the place where these ordinance changes will start, and then they will go to the proper committee or commission for review, and then back to the council for final approval. And in this case, since it's under 114, we do need to have a public hearing to amend our zoning ordinance. So I guess with that, I'll open it up for any preliminary questions, and you have some time to gather some comments on this and provide them, and before we make some sort of recommendation to council.
Just say, I always hate that word small, because what's small to you may not be small to me. So if I look small industrial, it's going to be a heck of a lot bigger than small residential for a solar system, or a solar, yeah.
That's actually a good point. To define what small is. This is, well, it does have a definition there.
There is a definition, and it's designed for a single residential, commercial, or industrial property. So in other words,
it's not
to
gonna
meet the demand of that particular property would be small. Yeah. So it's commensurate generally with the size of the building it's serving.
Correct.
An industrial building will have.
So I'd be able to have
something
it bigger
larger.
than your house.
Right.
My house would have
Right.
a bigger solar. Okay.
But it would serve that site,
That site,
not,
yeah.
it's not going to be.
You're not selling back to the grid.
It's not going to be a
I think
solar
it's
farm.
probably the
Yes.
key thing there. Right.
Maybe not to exceed.
Well, maybe something right in there would be that you can't you can't be producing excess power, right? I mean, that would be a fairly easy way to regulate it, right?
Well, for right now, but we don't know where solar panels or energy or how easy it is going to be to harvest it in 10 or 20 years, and maybe technology will make that not.
Well,
Well, good, then they
You-
get smaller to serve a single site, and if people
Sure.
still want to do that, then it's just not defined as small. It no longer meets the definition of small, so we need a different part of the code to regulate something where people are selling.
Bring an extension cord over to your house and plug it in.
Right.
I mean, with the word residential, I mean, would that be better to use than small?
no, well, I
Because
mean, the
that could
theory
change
is let's
potentially
say, McDonald's wants to put, on their roof, solar cells. No, they don't own the building, so that might not be a great example, but
Right.
they still could apply for it and have their landowner's permission. This is, as I said, this is designed for basically a single property. So if Gar Plastics wanted to put some, or Lyco, or, you name the business, they could under this code. And this section of the code would regulate what they could or could not do.
If Enertech grew, they had like 3 different buildings out there.
Just a reminder, guys, since this is being broadcast on air, I know we have the Zoom mic, but we do need to use the regular mic if somebody's trying to watch it back.
It says single. I mean, we can clearly better define that. I mean, to me, that means, yeah, if they own multiple parcels. But I mean, they'd still have to meet all the other requirements under 2. So I mean, and essentially these will be treated as an accessory structure. So one of the parts of the codes that would influence this is you cannot start building an accessory structure until a principal structure is on the building. So if, you're, let's say in this case, Interpack, and they own 2 other parcels out there, and that was just like their parking lot or whatever, by code, they couldn't just go out there and put these up because that's not on the same parcel as the principal structure, if that makes sense. I mean,
Could
so
we
that-
use sorry.
no, as I say, really the rationale behind that is, I own a piece of property that's red zoned residential. I'm just going to put up a garage, and 5 years later, I'm going to put up the house, and then the house never comes. So that, I think that's the rationale, that they want to have whatever the principal use of the property is built first.
Sure. If we just use the word instead of small, could we say something like individual solar energy systems?
I can live
I
with that.
like that, I was thinking the same thing, like self-sufficient
Right.
energy system, or,
So then it's not like, it gives the idea that it's not being sold back to the grid, or it's not just
Well, and if it
singular.
is sold back to the grid, it's going to be minimal. I mean,
Right.
I would assume most of these would basically just cut down their bill. But if they do sell them back, it's not like, these are going to be making millions of dollars, or thousands of dollars for that
maybe
matter.
that's a pertinent question to ask. I'm not an expert on solar energy, so how big of a set of panels would you need to serve all of the needs of a single-family residential, and then use that as sort of your visual for, well, boy, what could we be allowing here?
Or, I mean, if you look at the Water and Light project, I think those are actually the panels out there that kind of sparked you to look at this. I mean, those are large panels. It's very large, but that would also, if I understand correctly, fall under the same ordinance because they're using it for obviously not just.
Yeah, but in their case, they're obviously grandfathered, so this obviously wouldn't impact them unless
Right,
they
but-
replace or, added more.
When Wisconsin Focus on Energy did that for us, when they came in, when I was on Water and Light, they came in and it was supposed to give us power, to power all the lights and stuff in the offices. Is what
Yeah.
it would do. It would help.
Yeah, water and light's not gonna be, it's just gonna offset their costs at the, yeah.
So, and it's also is, to show that, hey.
Hey, Uriah, I
we're
can answer
very-
part of your
so-
question.
Yeah, good, Brad.
So for my house, to run the house would cover, if you look at my house, half of it faces the road and or the roof. The other part is a hip roof, so just counting the face of half of that, the count that faces the road, that and part of the garage is about the size I would need to run my house. Sorry, I don't have square footage, but if you realize the size of the garage roof, half of it, so maybe twice that.
Okay, and you're talking all the lights, you know, all your
Everything.
electronics, everything you need.
Yep.
Okay, good. That's a good visual.
Any other questions on this ordinance
Yeah, I have a
before?
question about number 5, as you were talking about.
Yeah.
Matt. Yeah, so I can appreciate what that's trying to prevent. I think it's very difficult. I don't know if I have an answer, but other things to consider is there's a lot of precedent. I'm not a lawyer, but if someone wants to build a tall structure in most areas, the neighbors don't have a right to a view. So, you know, the new construction has the ability to usually build straight up, and if it obstructs somebody's view, that's usually just fine. So I think that might come into play here. The other problem is, even though it says central daylight savings time on here, it doesn't give you a season. Whereas in the winter, I looked up, at the worst, the sun would be at a 23-degree angle, which is really shallow. So even if someone's tree or solar panel was pretty far away from the property line, if it was a very tall tree, that shadow could extend pretty far into somebody's property. So that makes the intrusion or lack of use quite extensive. Most property owners have the right, like if you put a tree right on the lot line and the neighbor doesn't like it, they can trim the limbs that extend over the lot line, so they have control over that. So if the sun's vertical, no big deal, they can trim the trees. But it's in the winter when that sun really tips over, it's going to extend pretty far into the lot. So those are complications. I don't have an answer. I do appreciate what it's trying to say, fix though, or prevent.
Yeah, I don't have an answer on this one either. This is one I know I had to deliberate on a little bit more.
Yeah, I mean, you could say like, if I put these on my house, or my neighbor puts his on his house, and you know, early on, somebody put in some willows here, those things are 50-some feet tall now. And they would even shade, you know, the neighbor's house, even if they kept the panels on the house. So, yeah, so this conflict could be extensive. You know, maybe here's an idea is you parse it to, if you put the panels on your house, this statute applies. If you put the panels in your yard, you've got a lot more flexibility. This statute does not apply. You can't restrict your neighbor from planting trees. That way there's a little restriction on each person.
I think that's a good point, and I think that would help, you know, just putting the panels on your house. But obviously, if the tree that is in question is already shadowing, that doesn't come into play here anyhow. But I think that's going to be difficult for the neighbors. Maybe it's a new lot across the street and they plant a tree, and then 30 years later, then it becomes a nuisance to the solar panel on somebody's house. It's yeah, very difficult.
I guess I have a question, and forgive me, maybe I'm way wrong here, but I thought we're talking of the solar panels as a, like you said, accessory structure, which is, in my mind's eye, not attached to the house or separate from the house, but then every once in a while we're talking about the solar panels on the roof. So, I mean, are we talking about solar panels in the yard collecting, or are we talking attached to the roof?
So in other words, from a code standpoint, can an accessory structure be attached to a principal structure? I think you've stumped the panel.
Well, rooftop, building mounted, or freestanding. Well, it defined under 2, it says rooftop, building mounted, or freestanding. So, well, these all are, and keep in mind, the one thing to, under item number 2, these are conditional uses. So these are all going to come to Plan Commission for some sort of blessing. But you're right, typically an accessory structure does not, go on a roof. It's just, how do you classify these? The way I interpret this is, it doesn't, maybe I shouldn't say they define them. It says under 3, it says solar energy, why don't we do this? Individual solar energy systems shall comply with all requirements for accessory structures in residential zone district. So maybe I may be saying that, I guess what I meant by I'm treating them as an accessory structure. We're not technically classifying them as an accessory structure. They just have to meet the requirements. I'll have to check with Paul on how we rooftop, because I mean, to me, if I would think, if I was putting one of these on my home, I would want it on the roof. I think 99% of the residential ones would be on the roof. Like, who wants to have half their yard taken up by a solar cell? Unless you have like a 10-acre parcel on the edge of town or something.
In which case, you most likely won't have a neighbor shadowing here.
Well,
And forgive me, it does say on number 2, rooftop, building mountain. I'll be honest, I read right past that, but then we're talking about accessory, so I was just confused, because if it's on the roof, to me, my mind's eye, it's not accessory at that point.
no, it is. When I was trying to evaluate the water and light one, that was where it was like, well, how does our code really apply to this? And after some discussion, we kind of figured out where it fit. But having some clarity would be helpful, because then there's more transparency for the zoning administrator when he's making those decisions. So, or she's making those decisions. Yeah, I will clarify that with Paul as well.
Thank you.
So I think number 5 is what's really just stumping everybody. I don't know if we could go to like a percentage of daylight blockage. Because
Well, that gets. Well, I mean, even now, the way it's written, I mean, it's pretty hard to. It's going to be hard to figure out which was there first, right? And if we go to a percentage of blockage, that's a whole nother calculation that
that's going to be difficult for neighbors to figure out.
It's going to be difficult to enforce. So, there's somewhere out there, there's got to be some sort of easy solution to this. And I know in other parts of our code it says basically if you're putting them up, you have to like notify your neighbors. But that's not even a good way to do it, because neighbors change. People sell property all the time, and it's just that's not a proper way to do it. So,
Is this something that a lot of other communities have ordinances for?
Cross Plains does,
Okay.
and I believe that's where this ordinance came from.
Okay.
I could look at others.
I know in council, when this was first brought to council, I know I address the same question, and at the risk of being redundant, I'll ask it again, I guess. If it says the property owner, the person in control of property shall allow the tree or shrub to be placed so till it grows as to not cast a shadow between blah, blah, blah. Well, if you put the solar panel there and then, let's say, 10 years down the road, new neighbors next door, I guess I should ask, is it required to the permit to plant a tree?
No.
So let's say they're unaware of this and then they plant a tree, the owner or no person in control of a property. And so if you own the property and your neighbor plants a tree, now do you have the authority to go move that tree? Or
I think the issue is that it's just not enforceable. So creating ordinance that's not enforceable is frowned upon, because what's the purpose? It's like having a street sign that's, like ducks crossing. Well, okay. Or deer crossing. Well, but truthfully, yeah, it's a warning, but you can't enforce anything.
do you understand my question? Or
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, I don't know how we're going to get that hashed out, but I think you're right that collectively, that's a concern. I would hope that Attorney Johnson is looking at this very carefully to say, is this even a provision that should be in here? I'm trying to think of another situation where a permit is granted to one party that prohibits another party from being able to perform a certain action. I can't think of anything.
That's what I'm saying, yes.
There's certainly rules out there that prohibit one party from performing certain actions on their own property that infringe upon the neighboring property's rights to enjoyment. Right, and I think that's what Brad was kind of getting at with the view blockage thing.
Yeah.
But boy, oh boy, I just honestly I don't know how this would stand up if somebody really challenged it. So let's not get ourselves into that position. But like Brad, I don't know how to solve it tonight.
I guess the one thought that I just had would be, instead of having a shall allowed in there, maybe it has to be a little bit more mushy and something to the maximum extent practical. If your neighbor has a solar panel, don't plant a tree to block his sun. I mean, in legalese, but something to that effect, where some effort needs to be made. I don't know how you word it, but it's probably going to be mushy and there's going to be loopholes, and it's not going to be something where you're going to go throw the book at them. But I mean, even here, no person shall. Maybe we just say no person should instead of a shall, because then it becomes optional, not mandatory. That might not be the best way to address it, but I agree that there's some concerns over how this would be enforced if this was ever a conflict. I mean, it really would be difficult.
Because
and the point of having these kinds of things written down is to avoid that future conflict, so that someone doesn't need to go to court to sort out the language, and it's clear, and someone doesn't make an investment either in trees or in solar panels, only to lose it later on. So it's a valuable section if we can get part of it, clean up. Even if we get part of it answered and leave the rest to chance, but at least we have some clarity and some protection for people. I think of myself as I would like solar panels on my house, and I also like trees. So how would I handle this? If I moved into a new house, I want to plant some trees. But if I have a $17,000 solar panel system, I don't want my neighbor planting 50-foot trees. They're going to cover it up in a few years. So it is difficult. I think, the attorney's going to have to look at the precedent for, things like that. Like you said, the view or anything else that may impinge on somebody's use of their property. My concern about the drive-through was the same kind of thing, was the neighbors in the apartment who are only about 200 feet away, probably, are gonna be listening to somebody going, you know, you want fries with your Taco Bell there up until 1 o'clock in the morning, and that infringes on their right of their use of their property. So, yeah, we have these issues. The attorney would know better how to solve them than I would.
I would just like to state, I hope they don't want french fries with their tacos.
Taco Bell's menu is being updated, no longer carrying fries.
Yeah. You know what? They'll be open by December, assuming that they can get through all the other approvals and get through it. So we can all get fries after our December plan commission meeting. So
Christmas party at Taco Bell.
hopefully it's not going to last till 1 though, if we have plan commission that night. So, I will talk with Paul, try to maybe find other solar array ordinances. Because I think Brad's point at the end about, you know, if you're making a $10,000 investment or whatever, I mean, whatever the investment is for these solar arrays, which I know aren't cheap, you want some,
17,000.
what, 17? Okay, so it sounds like you're looking at them. So you're going to want some insurance that you're going to be able to use that for a certain length of time, whether it's 10, 15, 20 years. And, you know, obviously having that blocked by shade would be detrimental to that property. So, I mean, there's a reason that this clause is in there. It's just trying to find a way that it's, one, easy to enforce, two, easy to understand and implement. So,
And right now, it satisfies neither one of those.
correct. So,
I just have one more question, Matt. How far back is the setback if it was an accessory structure? How far back is it?
it depends on the district. It really depends on what the zoning district is. So usually if it's a detached accessory, it's automatically has to at least be 5 foot off the rear of the property, but the side yard setback depends on what the zoning is. So if it's, you know, R1, it's got to be 10 feet. Some of the other residential districts there, it's got to be 10% of the lot width at the building line, which is something when our code gets rewritten, that rule is going away because it's just hard to enforce. It's just kind of a wonky rule. I don't know why they developed that. So that's really as I said, it depends on the zoning.
Okay, I was just asking just to see
Yeah.
how big of a, like, well, I guess how many houses would be even thinking about accessory buildings if they even had the room to do it?
Yeah.
Accessory structures, I guess.
Yeah. Well, and if you think for the principal structure, you know, it's always probably going to be 5 to 10 feet set off the property, you know, and really, I can't imagine any of these solar arrays going up in the older part of town because the older part of town has so many trees on it. So we're really talking about anybody who's going to be getting a solar panel are probably going to be living out on the edge of town or in Parkview or maybe out in Kestrel where the trees aren't. I mean, they're just not as big as they are in the central part of town here. Well, unless they're going to go out and get some chainsaw and take down a few trees on their property so they have more sunlight. But
All in the name of environmentally clean, friendly energy.
all right. So think about it. I'll do some research. Any comments between now and the next meeting, feel free to share them. Otherwise, I will be working on noticing the public hearing for the next meeting. One thing I do need to figure out, and probably we need to talk about this at the council level, is with the Columbus Journal no longer running print editions. We probably need to figure out where these notices are going to be printed. Because I believe by our code and by statute, they have to be printed in a newspaper of circulation in the city. So whether that means it's the Beaver Dam Citizen or the State Journal, I think both of those would probably meet that description, but it's just something with that news that came out this week, last week, whenever.
Well, we got a letter if you got the Columbus Journal, you're going to get the Beaver Dam Daily Citizen until the end of your subscription. So.
Oh, okay.
And does it have to be printed per se? Because I heard that they're going to continue doing the online portion.
Yeah, I believe that would be something else I probably should clarify with Paul, but I believe by state statute, I think the notices have to be printed. And then you
Chapter
could,
985.
so, I
specifies
mean, in this case,
municipalities of certain
I used to
size.
always put the legal proof in there, but this case, I actually found the legal notice from the last paper and put it in there. We do get an affidavit, but usually that goes to the clerk and Pat files it, so since it doesn't come to me, I'm like, oh, I always forget about it, so I just usually put the proof or something in there so you guys know I actually did notice every notice properly.
I like that, by the way.
So, all right, any other items? Oh, jeez.
No other comments on
Okay.
this draft solar array ordinance?
Okay.
All right. All right, let's move on to 8D. Review final draft chapters of comp plan.
I know last meeting was long, and this is shaping up to be another long one, so I'll try to get through this material as quickly as I can in a thorough manner, if that makes any sense. Oh, shoot. I will bring this up on the screen to run through them. So, all right, chapters. All right, so tonight we're going through chapter 2, chapter 5, 6, and 8. So these are otherwise known as agricultural, natural, and cultural resources, transportation, economic development, and intergovernmental cooperation. A lot of these have been already reviewed at a previous meeting. I'll just go through them, as I said, one by one. Really, what I'm looking for tonight is to start having some discussion on the goals, objectives, and policies for each chapter. A lot of the material that, especially in this first one for agricultural, natural, and cultural resources, is materials that I've essentially compiled. For agriculture, I'm still looking for more data that I could put into that section. It is a little light for my liking because, typically, why don't I just start going through it? The one thing that I found from the DOR that was really enlightening was 48% of the assessed property in our community in Columbus is actually classified as agricultural. So, and when we get into the land use, I'm going to show this as well, but it's 48% of the land is assessed as agricultural, but then it's like a very small percent is actually value because of the how agricultural land is valued under state statutes. There's I won't say exemptions, but usually the agricultural property has a much lower value. It is a big business in the county. And it has a large impact, especially when you look around here. Even in the formation, the canning factory was a big part of when Columbus was founded here. It was a big business, and you look around the outskirts of our community, and you look at some of the businesses in our community, and agriculture has a huge impact. The rest of the section really gives more data at a county level. I'm not, as I said, I'm not going to go through this as in depth as I did the first time. So basically, we get into natural resources. We just start talking about land resources, talking about soils, and forests and woodlands. And a lot of the data, as I said, is more compiled and held at the county level. So some of these sections don't get into a detailed level of what this means to Columbus. One thing to note, and I don't think I added this. So under the non-metallic and non-metallic mineral resources, I need to add that there's Michaels in town, and then there's Link that is in the planning area just to the south of town on 89. It's right, Link Aggregates. So that is something I just remembered. Then we go into water resources, talking about groundwater, talking about wetlands, talking about floodplain, and surface water, and just kind of going through and a lot of these requirements, when you're talking about impaired waters or outstanding and exceptional waterways, these are things that are part of the statute. So, I mean, these are things that I'm just going through and kind of looking through DNR databases and essentially just plucking them and putting them into the plan. So the one thing, and I just wanted to remind, under the impaired waterways, if you look under the DNR's surface water viewer GIS site, the Columbus Mill Pond and the Crawfish River, basically north of the dam, all has been identified as impaired because of it's a fish consumption advisory due to high PCBs. One of the things that council has done recently is worked with they've started to do some water quality training, which and they've taken the credits that they've sold and basically have turned around and tried to partner with local farmers to help with the phosphorus runoff in some of these areas to help improve the water quality in the area. And that's important because the other part that's impaired is impaired to do higher than permitted phosphorus in the water. So council is actually already taking steps to address this and using the fact that we have water quality credits to trade because of I think it's because of our capacity at our storm wastewater treatment plant. The DNR has a nice little diagram here on 2.1 that I like, that kind of explains the difference between the different areas. So you talk the floodways, kind of, that's the no. You don't build anything in there. The flood fringe, technically you can build certain things in there, but there's just a lot of rules that you have to make sure you reach out to the zoning administrator and try to follow those rules, or otherwise there are consequences. And it's something, obviously, in our community with the impact of FEMA and floodplain that we really need to be cognizant of. At any point, if you have questions, feel free to stop me. Otherwise, I'm just going to ramble through this. Wetlands, here's some more information about wetlands provided through the DNR. The threatened and endangered species, really, when you go on to the National Historic Inventory database through DNR, you can find the local endangered species or endangered, threatened, or special concern species at the town level. And by the town, technically it's the township range that's under the public land survey system. It does happen to coincide in this case with the town of Elba and the town of Columbus. So they don't have it to the municipal or to the city level, but so you can see in here the three species and two different communities that are listed under the NHI. And then the next, environmental sensitive areas. This is a requirement of the state statute where we look at the DNRs also, they have a tracking system to track potentially contaminated sites out there. And I think there's 6 open sites left and there's 103 that are closed. This doesn't mean they have every single site where there's potential contamination. So if there are sites out there where we think there's still contamination, we're going to recommend people do a phase 1 and eventually probably a phase 2. Moving on to cultural resources, really this is where the biggest cultural resource we have when you start looking at our community is the plethora of yep, sorry.
One page back to table 2-1,
Yes. So this, so, so this is a listing of everything on the DNR's, the inventory that they have that's either considered, so let's say the golden seal, which the scientific name is there, it's considered a special concern, SC, which is one about which some, wow, I just copied this from their website too, so this definition doesn't make any sense to me. One about which one some problem of abundance or distribution is suspected but not proven. There must be a typo in that. So there's different levels. So you have endangered species, which obviously has the highest threat, and then there's threatened species where the DNR feels that there's some concern over them, that they could become endangered but are not yet endangered, and then the special concern, which is kind of the lower level of fear. So, when you look at it, the redfin shiner, that's a fish that is in this area that is a threatened species. So that's all this is just a listing of any threatened, endangered, or other species that the DNR has concern over.
And then I guess the other thing is cultural resources, and we just talked about
Is that what?
historic landmarks are cultural.
Generally, that's when you look at.
It seems like a weird place for this to be in.
There was that's kind of really what the fit is for that is the cultural, because I mean the other sorts of amenities we have, if you're talking like some sort of parks or recreation or library, that got tackled in chapter in the utilities and community facilities, because those are community facilities. So this is another, and this is a section, when you're working on the comp plan, there's really the natural resources probably should be its own chapter, but they kind of slapped in agricultural and cultural with it, with the statute. I'm not really sure why they made all those three into one element. But I mean, ultimately, in my experience with the past comp plans, I mean, this is where you talk a lot about, landmarks and things of that nature. So, yeah. And one thing that is not on there yet that I've asked for from our HLPC is a list of all local designations. We don't have that, and I don't have that previously. But it is interesting to note, we have 22 either districts or places on the state or national register. This is the listing that you can find from the Wisconsin Historical Society. When you can kind of look, when I looked at other communities, really, I mean, I'm sure if I would have taken the time to go break it down per population, per capita type of thing, we really have a abundance of historically designated properties for the size of our community.
For the record, HLPC tonight was just discussing the created a position, and Jan Ulrich is going to be the archivist, and they're talking about coming up with a list of the local landmarks that are here, because many are on the state and federal, but not a local, and they're trying to create a up-to-date list.
Yeah. And I've talked with Carolyn, and I've from the HLPC, Carolyn Fredericks, and I've tried to request an updated list so I could have it. I probably should add a blurb in here as a placeholder, and keep in mind these are still a draft until they're finally approved. So there's probably a little bit of work I need to do to this section as well. So then I go through and talk about the 4 historic districts that we have, and then we get into goals, objectives, and policies. So this is one where I always start with the goals, objectives, and policies that were in the previous plan, and if they still make sense, then I keep them. In this case, the goals, objectives, and policies from the last plan was just generic, like, oh yeah, we should preserve and maintain all agricultural, cultural, and natural resources. It's just like, no, you probably should have at least a goal for each one. So I've started kind of with some goals, objectives, and just for discussion, you know, the one thing I think agricultural wise, I mean, in the city, long term, you know, agricultural will have an impact, but more so the agriculture will have an impact on what happens around our community. Eventually, over time, I'm hoping that 48% of assessed value being agriculture comes down to a number that's probably more fitting of a city. You know, it serves its purpose right now, and it will serve its purpose for, you know, for a portion in the future. But, you know, even the last comprehensive plan that we adopted, the future land use plan, didn't show everything, specifically everything within the highway within the city. That was all shown as different uses other than agricultural. So even 10 years ago when the city adopted the plan, agricultural was important, but it wasn't, that's not going to be the long-term vision. So, but, you know, if we can promote the efficient and orderly development of what we got now, that helps mitigate long-term development of agriculture and the conversion from agriculture to other uses. Protect natural resources within the city's planning area, that's pretty general, but then also preserve the historic structures within the city of Columbus. And then obviously going down the scale, we get a little bit more specific. And then so objectives, so that first one, that's probably one that probably should be updated because that was from the previous plan and it was just generic. Protect the agricultural, environmental, and cultural assets in Columbus. We discussed last time that, you know, any other areas where there's overflow, but not where certain objectives kind of meet other elements. That we're going to include some of these objectives. So, you know, the creation of a stormwater utility, it addresses natural because we talk about flooding in the floodplain in here. And, you know, to me, that just seems like to be a natural connection. So looking at policies, talking about working with the townships around us to promote efficient development, encourage maintenance and rehabilitation of historic areas. I put in there, continue to engage in water quality training. In the 5-year capital improvement plan, I think is a good policy because it goes back to that stormwater utility. If we're going to have a utility and we're going to have funding dedicated for stormwater improvements, that would be found under that capital improvement plan. And then 5, recommend the use of state and federal tax credits for the renovation of historic structures. That's something that I've been pushing since I've started. I've probably been through like a handful of buildings downtown, probably more than that, with the Wisconsin Historical Society to try to get somebody to actually use those tax credits to renovate their building, but to date that has not happened. At this point, I think, I guess I'd open for any other questions. I know there's probably some more detail that needs to go into this section, but being that it's late, I guess I would say I could go into well, I guess I'll leave it up to the commission. Is there any questions? So I think there's going to be other, I shouldn't say I think, I know there needs to be some more detail, more goals, objectives, and policies, especially when this is discussed as a final document, when we have our public hearing, when we have a joint meeting with council, which I'm going to try to get to later tonight, to further identify and refine these goals, objectives, and policies. Because ultimately, these are all nice, but I mean, until we can take, you know, something that we identify as a policy and implement it, I mean, that's really where the rubber meets the road with these plans. So with that being said, I'll move on to believe the next one is chapter 5, which is transportation. Being that so, and this one also was reviewed at the Plan Commission level previously. Just working through this, starting the first section talks about highways and streets, really talks a lot about functional classification and what those requirements are. And this is just a definition of each type of roadway as it's classified, and then it also lists the roadways that meets each classification. One thing that I think I added since the last meeting was this table 5.1. This is helpful when you're looking at patterns. A lot of people, when you're talking about like pedestrian improvements and things like that, bike and pedestrian or other, whether it be mass transit, forget that there is a segment of the population that don't have a car, that either can't drive for some sort of disability, or they just don't own a car. So if we're going to make improvements, we need to make improvements that serve everybody in our community. Columbus, compared to the state, we have a much lower percentage of households that have no vehicles available to them, where for the statewide it's about 6.7%. In the city, it's only 1.2% of households. So, but I thought that was an interesting thing to look at. The other numbers, one vehicle, we're slightly above, and then there's not terrible amount of difference in the amount of households with 2 vehicles or 3 vehicles or more. Also looked at commuting patterns, which you can see on table 5.2 here for the city of Columbus. So about 84% are driving alone to work, 8% carpool, very few take public transportation or walk, or I can't remember what the other means all entailed. But the average travel time to work is 24 minutes. So that's a figure that I think when I looked it up and compared it to Columbia County and the state, we're kind of in between the two. We are a little bit higher than I think the state average is 22. When I looked it up, I didn't put it in the table, but looked up the data. And then, any questions on the first 2 tables? So I also go through other forms of travel. So the van pool program, which is offered through the state, being that we're relatively close to Madison, it's ran through DOA. Basically, it's a carpooling program where they use the 15-passenger van. Actually, one van is parked outside our city hall right now, and that's because right now they're not running due to COVID. But when they are running, they're Pick and Save and St. Jerome's are the 2 locations where they operate out of. And I believe 3 van pools run from the city into Madison. So, and that's a good program. It has to have a state employee to get into the program, but others can sign up for it if they're going to basically a similar location. So, let's see. Talking about facilities for elderly and disabled, the county Commission on Aging basically has had a program for disabled that they'd come out, and the prices are reflected in the document. Talking about bike and pedestrian transportation, talks a little bit about that. It mentions the Columbia County has a bike loop number 8, which travels through Columbia County. Talking about rail service, we are on the Canadian Pacific rail line, So just a general, a little bit of background information on that. And then there's some information on Amtrak that I pulled together. And you can see, and I'll just go through the tables kind of quickly. Basically, and I just included in this table, I excluded Milwaukee because the Milwaukee Intermodal Station also has the Hiawatha line. So a lot of the traffic that goes through the Amtrak station is just due to the Chicago connection, not really the Empire Builder. So I figured this was more kind of apples to apples. It's relatively flat when you look at the last 5 years for our ridership in Columbus compared to the others. But the interesting thing that I found when you looked at table 5.4 is the revenues. I mean, we do, our station generates more revenue per rider than the other stations, and it's not really close. So I think there's a variety of reasons for that. One, we are the closest station to Madison, so I think we get a lot of traffic from that. But two, it simply has to do with we generate longer trips. I don't know why that is, but it's clear when you look at the data that Amtrak provides that some of the top destinations are out in like Montana and out in Seattle, all the way out to Seattle. So the longer trips, for whatever reason, originate from our facility. I'm sure if I had the time, I probably could look at it and compare the stations, but I don't. But I'm assuming probably parking, location, all those things probably make it just more convenient than, let's say, Portage or the Dells to take your long trip from. So I think the good news with that is, since we're a better station revenue-wise, I think if they were ever looking to remove a station, I would be surprised if it would be ours. And one would think between Portage, the Dells, and Toma, that one of those, if they ever needed to remove one, that it'd be one of those stations. Other thing to note, and I didn't put this in here because I'm not sure long term how this is going to play out, but starting October 1st, due to COVID, the Empire service is being cut to 3 days a week. So that, immediately that's probably going to impact the ridership numbers and probably the revenue numbers to some extent. But on the flip side, one thing long term that's being discussed right now that will really impact Columbus will be that TCMC route, which is the Twin Cities, Milwaukee, Chicago, and it's basically going to operate on the Empire Builder, and it's going to operate under Amtrak, but it's going to be a regional route. And typically regional routes have better on-time performance, and they have higher ridership because there's more dependability and all those kind of things. So right now they've been applying for grants to basically make some upgrades to the tracks. I don't know when this would ever come to fruition, but I mean, it's something that could happen within a couple of years, or it might take 10 years. At this point, I'm not really sure, but it's something that would have a impact on Columbus. Looking at aviation, the closest airport, Dane County Regional Airport, and some background on airports, talking about a little bit about freight, and obviously we do not have a port, but you have to add that. Once again, these goals, objectives, and policies were essentially from, for the most part, the previous plan. They still seem to, for the most part, apply to our needs. So provide a safe, efficient transportation system that meets the needs of multiple users in and around Columbus. So obviously this includes pedestrians, motorists, bicyclists. Maintain improved street networks at a level of service desired by our residents and businesses. And maintain and improve the bicycle pedestrian network at a level acceptable by residents and businesses. I don't know. Do you want me to read through everyone? Or is this at this point? I know it's getting late, so I don't.
Well, and we have been through these. Maybe the highlights of
So, okay, so Hammer Policies, capital improvement program, that's going to be in anything that has any sort of major, so community facilities and transportation, any sort of major investment, that would be a capital improvement. Obviously, that's a policy I think we should strongly consider. Where feasible, and I was a little mushy on this. I still don't know how exactly we want to develop a coordinated off-street parking lots in the downtown. So I've always maintained that it would be helpful if the areas behind the businesses downtown had kind of uniform asphalt, stormwater, and a layout where the upstairs residents could easily park back there, and that leaves the on-street parking for the customers. But being that for the most part the backs of these buildings are owned by like 30 different people, it's been a struggle to do that. And then also on top of that, where would the funds come from? So if long term, if there was ever some sort of TIF in the downtown area, that might be the opportunity to where the city could have some financial gain if they could address this. So as I said, where feasible, some of the blocks you might not be able to do it. Specifically, the block kind of behind where Cardinal Embroidery is, that block there would be hard because I know it's some of the other blocks it's just more wide open back there. So yeah, it's I don't know how you'd get access without taking down a building or something like that, and that's not really my intent. It's just where we can improve it, we can, and I think that would be something that would be worthwhile. So I'll just jump right into economic development and go through that. The last chapter.
I'm sorry, Matt, the only thing I saw in transportation
Yep.
is on the first page, I had to ask Uriah what ADT stood for.
Oh,
Highest ADT, it never says what that acronym stands for.
that's a good point. And one of the things I need to add at the end of this is an acronym definer. So when people are going, because I probably should do it at the start of every chapter is define every acronym before I use it. So yes, well, but if you're only looking at So this is one, and this is, I debated whether or not to share this tonight because I haven't updated all the tables, the formatting wise, and there's some data that needs to be updated for the years. But generally speaking, the content that I talk about in the narrative, essentially most often in this chapter refers to the table. So both will be updated, but they're not going to substantially change the nature of the chapter. So I'm just going to go through these tables quickly, or maybe not, because we have not. We've reviewed this chapter, and I know it's getting late. But first table just looks at labor force and unemployment rate, and this is according to the American Community Survey in 2017. I probably can find the 2018 number, which will probably change a little. But we keep in mind when we're looking at American Community Survey, it's a 5-year survey. So when it says 2017, it means 2013 to 2017. It replaced the long form, and it's a 5-year look to get a statistically significant sample. This table 2 is from a product called Census on the Map that is really interesting. You can actually look at worker workflows from where people live and where people work. So this table shows where people who live in Columbus, where they work. So you can see in 2015, and this is one where I'm going to update it to the most current data that I have. I think I used 2015, so it was a 10-year window when I created this, but you can see kind of a shift from back in 2005, 25% lived and worked in Columbus, and now you can definitely see this shift to people going to Madison. the second most popular option is people who live in Columbus, actually work in Columbus. And then you can see it goes to Sun Prairie, Beaver Dam, Fall River, the next three, and then after that it's kind of varied throughout. The one thing to keep in mind is we're definitely kind of in a labor shed for the people that live here either work in 75% of them either work in Dane, Columbia, or Dodge. So I mean, most of them are staying within the area. And then the next table also this is where our workers are coming from. So it's a little bit different than in 2015. It's a little bit different than table 2. 20% of the workers come from the city, which makes me wonder. Wait, it's a different data set. So this is so in the data the number is the same, but the percentage is a little different because there's only 2,130 jobs in the city. So city residents comprise 2,730 jobs, but this is just jobs in the city. The highest percentage in the city. The next come from Beaver Dam and Fall River, Sun Prairie, then Madison. So this is kind of looking at where does our talent, where does our workforce come from? So generally speaking, it's the same as for the counties. When you look at the counties, it's the same as it was for where our residents work, and that is basically our workforce is coming from Dane, Columbia, and Dodge County. That's 75% of the workforce, and the rest are kind of scattered throughout the rest of the state. This table 4 just looks at the different class of worker and basically compares it to the county and the state. And also this looks at table 5 looks at employment by occupation for the Columbus compared to the county and the state. And then we start looking at employment by industry, and this is generally broken down by NAICS code at the highest level, and you can see how we compare to the rest of the state in the county. And this specifically looks at jobs by NAICS sector. For jobs, and it compares two things: jobs in Columbus and jobs held by Columbus residents. So you notice that the jobs in Columbus in 2017, we have a strong manufacturing base for number of jobs, and then healthcare was the two largest sectors that showed up in that. But you kind of look on the flip side. You look at the jobs held by people who live in the city. Manufacturing is still the base, but then healthcare is the second, and then retail is the next. So I guess it is the highest three is the same, but it's just a different percentage. This is just a table that shows. From the Department of Workforce Development, you can get the largest employers. They don't give you their specific employee, they'll give you their employee range. One of the things to keep in mind is that was difficult with this is they broke out the schools into 3 different categories because it's the high school, elementary school, middle school. So instead of just saying how many people work for the schools, it's broken into 3. The other one that was kind of tricky was Roberts Manufacturing, because technically he's got Powergistics and Roberts, and then Fisk is his other. So I mean, technically it's 3 businesses, but it's all under one roof. So sometimes the way this was broken down by the DPW might not look intuitive to what you think are the largest employers, but for the most part, it's fairly accurate. Let's see. This table looks at the county. Table 8 isn't broken down by the municipal level. The county level is the highest data, so you can look at wage by industry type, and then this one is, Table 9 is industry projections, so kind of looking at what opportunities are out there, where does the Department of Workforce Development think, what are growing sectors and industries that we should be looking at, and then I included this twice. The table 10 also in the economic development, we put the BERTS database, which we talked about in section under the natural resources. I also included in this section because infill development it typically can occur on some of these environmentally contaminated sites. Just looking through goals, objectives, and policies. Once again, some of these came from the previous comp plan. The one goal that I think is interesting, we've talked about this a little bit at tourism, and we've talked about doing a tourism marketing plan right now at the staff level. And when you look at goal number 3, this is something that I've always kind of found to be interesting, is establish and promote a unique identity for the city of Columbus. As staff, when I first started, you look through letterhead, and it was like at one point we were the Energy Sustainability Committee or Community, then we were Discover Columbus, then we were Celebrate Columbus. Now we use the Discover Columbus logo again. I am not, with my background, it's more planning and economic development. But like I always feel like I struggle with the marketing side of things when we have to get out and market the city and be the face of the city and explain things. I think if we had a clear brand, I think that would make it easier to. I just think that's something that maybe we might be lacking, or something we need to look at. I don't have all the answers for that though, but I just thought that was an interesting thing. And that one was a goal that was identified in 2009. And I would say, just from my experience here with the city, I don't know if we've ever really nailed that down and defined that. So, the other items, I guess, that, and any other questions about the goals, objectives, and policies, or am I good to go on to the final chapter of the night? And just so this group is aware, after this review, I'll make sure the final edits are made. I'll, like the ADT example, I've already seen a few things that I need to clarify on, and then they'll go out on the website, and at that point they're ready for review. So just so you're aware that these are going on the website. I don't know, I have not received any comments, but all right. This one's a very simple one, so we should be able to get through that in 5 minutes, even with me talking. So, intergovernmental cooperation. So essentially, what this chapter is, and what I've done is, I just went through, and I think this was, last time we reviewed this, Ed Johnson was on the Plan Commission, and I basically kind of switched everything around. He's like, well, it'd kind of be easier if you broke it down by the level of government that these are in, because the order really didn't make any sense. So on this, I started with areas of cooperation with the county. So there's Columbia County and Dodge County. We have generally what types of agreements we have with them, and then the mutual aid agreements that we have with the counties. That are, which that might have been able to put under the services, but we're splitting hairs at that point. And then the next section talks about local government. So what do we do with the town of Elba and the village of Fall River? I didn't see anything in our contracts that we have where there's any sort of direct agreement with the town of Columbus. I mean, they're shared services we have with them, but, so it's just the village and the town, and then education, the school district, other than the joint review board that the technical college deals or serves on, there isn't a lot that we could add with the technical college. And by technical college, I'm talking Madison Area Technical College that receives a portion of the property tax, and then just services. So you're talking about library, which serves a greater area than the city of Columbus, the fire services. The state agencies should have been moved out to a different section. Fire and emergency are the other kind of main services that we provide. And then I just talked briefly about relationships that we have with state agencies. And I should update the state agencies to also include WDC, because we are a Connect community through WDC. Connect Community is essentially like a Main Street program. It's kind of Main Street light, if you will. And we're a member there, and it gives us really the big thing is there's educational components that they provide that are really good, and I'm required to go to 2 a year to maintain our status as a Connect community. But usually they're really good networking events, and there's something I take away that I've implemented here. So the next the next section is just some tools that are for intergovernmental cooperation. As you're looking at shared service agreements or boundary agreements, or revenue sharing, just more information on those tools that are available, that are out there. And then once again, these are just the same goals, objectives, and policies from the previous plan. This is an area that, generally there's opportunities out there, and it's good to think about them, but I think when there's an opportunity to share services or do something, it's really not intuitive to say, oh, let's go amend the comprehensive plan. It's just like, let's just do it. So this ends up being more a repository of what has been done. And, maybe it's an opportunity to sit back and think, how can we share better services into the future? And this might be one, thinking about the discussion we had recently with Roadmap, like if a fire district ever was something that we recommended, that would probably be a goal or some sort of objective that we should consider a fire district to share the cost for facilities amongst all users of that receive fire service. Yeah. Yeah. But I mean, that's more general. I think if you have if you're specifically looking at a stormwater utility or I don't think there's any harm to be specific, especially under the policies. But once again, I think that's something that this board, but probably more so council, we need some direction on as we're adopting this along with the roadmap plan. So thanks for that. Any other questions? If not, thanks for bearing with me as I rattled through that. I know this has been a lengthy process to try to get to this point, and there are some mapping updates that we're working on, that I'm working on internally. And one of the things I wanted to throw out there is if I'm planning on a special meeting that's a joint meeting between council and the plan commission. I will be sending out a doodle poll to try to arrange that. My goal will be to have a quorum of both. There's going to be no official action. It's going to be more of a review and more of a in kind of informal discussion, and I anticipate some discussion about the goals, objectives, and policies that are in draft form, but more so the important part, and I mentioned this the other night when we met with council, is that the future land use is really the the crux of the plan. I mean, that's the most critical element. And, you know, our zoning needs to be in line with it. Or, you know, or I shouldn't say aligned, consistent with it is the proper legal language. And that's one where it has the most profound impact on our community. So having that discussion with council makes sense. And I don't foresee major changes from what the future land use map looks like now. The classifications will probably be a little different name, but I mean, generally speaking, I mean, the areas we have out that are off the highway interchanges are going to be designed and best used for commercial and or industrial type uses. So, I mean, that's what I anticipate. Maybe a few minor changes here and there, but nothing that's going to be like, wow, what's I mean, this is drastically different. The way we're laid out, it just makes sense that's where the commercial development is going to go for that kind of commercial development. And we still have to maintain that, you know, that's going to be serve out there. But, you know, if we have the downtown attraction, making sure that is, you know, they can coexist. I think maybe to some extent, you know, when the highway came through and everything went out. Correct. Yes, that along with where it fits would be retail type uses or other commercial uses. I mean, example like Duffy Fleet Services or Audrey Truck Service or even Drexel. I mean, all those came in recently. None of them are really manufacturing, but they're service. They're more technical jobs for the most part than correct. And there's nothing wrong with, you know, having, you know, Jimmy John's or Subway, but I mean, there's just got to be, you know, a nice mix of all those different business types out there. And we have space for it. It's just, you know, making sure, you know, we can attract those businesses and then, you know, there's kind of a lot of things that go into it, but, you know, the other thing that helps business grow is if we have some housing come with it. So, I mean, there's a lot of different components that come into it, and that's why it's, I guess, called a comprehensive plan. But, all right, it's 9:03. I guess any other questions on these 4 chapters, or any other objections if when they go, that I'll be putting them on the website for comment.
I'd just like to say that you did a pretty good job. It was 10 minutes, not 5 minutes, though.
Well, I know I talk a lot, so it's it is what it is.
Thank you.
Matt, I'm gonna apologize. I'm gonna back up on you, but the economic development, chapter 6.
Sure.
Page 5, table 7. What I kind of got hung up on was the educational services. We have one job in Columbus. I'm just trying to define what that is, because if you go to the next page, table 7, which we have 2 table 7s, but largest employers in the Columbus area, we've got, you know, all the school districts labeled as educational services. Is that what is that? I mean, I'm sure we have more teachers than one in Columbus.
No,
Is a resident of here. Am I not understanding the chart correctly? I'm sure it's a way of how it was categorized by NAICS, but that one just kind of
no, that's
stumped me a little bit.
that's a very good point, because you know what though, they're different. So what table?
Page 5.
So they're different. The one thing to note is they're different. They're different data sources.
Yeah.
I
was-
held by Columbus residents, it says there's 12 in educational service.
Yeah, no, there's
Jobs in Columbus, yeah, it says there's only one, so I don't know.
We have, you know, X amount of schools on the next table 7 that has 20 to 49 range of employees. I was a little stumped on that one.
is a
And
very good
don't think that-
notice. I try to verify the data as best I can, but sometimes.
no, I know. Like I said, I'm sure it's a
well,
way how they classify it and then just carry it through. Yeah, right. That's why I noticed it too. It was like,
If these numbers are carried straight over from something, I think what's implicit here that's not shown is what each of these categories captures.
Because educational services captures preschool, captures daycare.
Right. I might guess that teachers fall into the professional scientific.
No, yeah,
type,
it's
it
cool,
could be
yeah.
something else, so.
So I'm on the NAICS website now, and it's clear that would encapsulate schools. So, yeah, there's got to be something funky with that, so I'll take a look at it.
Something to look at, but otherwise, very good. Thank you.
Yeah, and as I said, these tables, I still need to go in and reformat and update, so. But I figured tonight when we were going through it, I'm like, well, we're attacking 3 chapters, why not look at this one, even though it's not final. So, at least gets me one step closer to having this somewhat done, so, thank you. All right, I promise, I know the next meeting might be a little bit longer too, and then after that, I bet you it's gonna get back to normal, so. With that, I guess, we can move on to the last item on the agenda.
Item 9, adjourn. I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second that.
All right, all those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Adjourned. Thanks, everybody.
Where are we at, 9:07?